This is Damien here. Um, in this video, I want to articulate and make a case for authentic relating and situating it within the greater context of how we view personal development and how authentic relating relates to other aspects of personal development and how it differs from other aspects of personal development. And I think it's quite important to kind of place these distinctions in relationship to each other, because it affords us the possibility of creating a more rounded structure of the way we develop ourselves. And I'll show that it's quite distinct from other aspects of growth. And something that I think about a lot, if we are interested in growth and we are interested in developing, becoming more mature, more effective, wise beings, there is this impetus or this impulse to evolve or grow. And one thing that I like to say is that conscious evolution or conscious growth is a function of intentionally applied awareness. So what this means is wherever I put my attention is what develops, is what grows. So if I put my attention or my awareness on different aspects of what's available to grow in my beingness, those things will grow, because growth in essence is actually an expanded sense of awareness in some capacity or another. And I'll go on to describe this as I kind of go through this presentation. So I'm going to use a kind of very rough sort of animation to articulate this. So I'm going to start that now. Okay. So this is drawing from philosopher Ken Wilber, integrals theory. So I'm going to kind of go into his 4-quadrant model and also kind of correlate that to another aspect of his model that he calls lines of development. And we don't really need to break that down too much. It'll become apparent in some way in this presentation. And so, if you're interested in diving more into his work, just look up Ken Wilber. He has a lot of very prolific writer. And his structure or his map of reality is something that's really informed the way that I think about the world. So we can think about, before anything that was, it's all oneness or nothingness, much like this blank screen in front of you. There's no division, there's no distinction between anything. So there's no other, there's no, and the notion of one can't even really be defined, because one in relation to what? There is nothing to compare to nothing. So there's nothing, but these concepts don't quite grasp it, because there is nothing to compare against. It just is. It's allness and nothingness. And somehow, in this great nothingness, the first division occurred. And so I'm going to use this to kind of draw this map. So we're representing it two-dimensionally. Of course, it's much more complex than this, but this is a two-dimensional way of representing this kind of unfolding of the structure of reality. So a division occurs, and that first division is between what we call the subjective or consciousness or awareness, that which perceives, that which experiences, and the objective, that which is experienced, that which is so all that is. So we have all that is to be experienced, and that which is experiencing it. So we have these two very distinct things, and they're very distinct in that they cannot be reduced one to the other. You cannot collapse this into the other. Matter and consciousness are very distinct things. You cannot measure consciousness in terms of matter, and you can't measure matter in terms of consciousness. They are different things. And so this is kind of the first division that occurs. So we have our subjective, we can also think of as the interiors, the internal stuff and objective is the exteriors. So my interior is my sense of self, that which I'm seeing, and my exterior is this body. And then we have another division that occurs, and that division is between singular and plural. So we have subjective, which is singular consciousness, I, and we have plural or multiple consciousness, the intersubjective space, we. And we have objective, singular objects, and we have interobjective systems, relationships of things interacting with one another. And I'm going to kind of break these down a lot more. So we have these four facets of reality. We have I, we're describing them by pronouns. We have it, we have we, and we have its. So singular, plural, subjective, and objective domains. Okay. So we exist in all of these four domains. As individuals, we still exist in all these four domains. And I posit that in order to develop in an integrated way, in a holistic way, is we actually need to develop in all four of these domains. We need to practice our growth. We need to practice our development of capacity in each of these domains. And so I'm going to run through some examples of that. So in the upper left quadrant, the subjective, singular subjective, the I quadrant, one of the forms of development that we prize so highly in our Western civilization is cognitive development or cognitive intelligence. And this is, we often refer to IQ as cognitive intelligence. It's our ability of our mind to think, basically, and understand and grasp. But this isn't all that intelligence is, you know. I think we intuitively know this to some degree or another. There are other forms of intelligence available to us. For example, mathematical intelligence, our ability to perceive the world through numbers and through mathematics, which I'm very limited in. I don't have a lot of mathematical intelligence. And I know some friends who have much more than me, and expert mathematicians can see the structure of reality in a way that is like completely beyond me. So this is an aspect of intelligence that can be developed, and it's distinct from cognitive intelligence. Or we have musical intelligence. Also, I'm not particularly developed musically, but some people are, and they can perceive reality through a musical structure. And this is something that we can be developed. If I cared enough, like if I really wanted to develop musically, I could apply my awareness to learning a musical instrument and as such develop my musical intelligence. We have emotional intelligence, our ability to, essentially the way I think about emotional intelligence, and there's a lot of, like, this is something we haven't articulated clearly, I think, but I think about it as the ability to stay emotionally regulated, to hold emotional regulation. And that is to be able to grasp the nature of emotions as an object in my own awareness, as something occurring to me rather than as me. So we can develop our emotional intelligence. We can develop our introspective intelligence. That's the ability to reflect upon ourselves, to actually take a look at ourselves. You know, practices that do this might be something like journaling. Journaling develops our introspective capacity. We have our shadow development, which is our ability to see our unconscious and to work with our unconscious structures, you know, essentially our trauma, but I'm not going to go into that, but working and resolving the aspects of us that function in less than efficient and less than desirable ways and bringing them to light and moving through them. And so these are separate lines of development. We also have spiritual intelligence, our ability to connect with states of oneness or connect with spirit, or a sense of godliness or divinity or something like that. And these are all intelligences that can be developed distinctly and separately. And developing in one does not guarantee development in another. Developing my cognitive capacity, which we often have a strong bias for, does not develop my emotional intelligence. And we know this. We know this. We know that people can be incredibly intelligent and very emotionally immature, or not spiritual, or not musical. So and there's more forms of intelligence. And then we can move over to the objective domain. We can think about objective intelligence. I like to think of this often as the body, just to kind of break it down, but it's broader than that. So one of these intelligences might be kinesthetic. This is our ability to sense the position of our body in space, and we can develop this through athletics, gymnastics, parkour, extreme sports, develop our kinesthetic intelligence. And we can be quite developed here, and this does not necessarily guarantee our development in any other domain. It doesn't make us more musical. The fact that I can orient my body doing a 360 or a 540 McTwist on a snowboard, something like that, does not make me musically inclined. Our ability to measure things and to use scientific principles happens in this domain. Our understanding of, like chemistry might be our ability to titrate and create chemical reactions and observe that and then draw hypotheses. So this is where we start to have a bleed between other domains. So our ability to interpret the measurement may start to draw on our cognitive capacities, so our cognitive development, but our ability to measure and become quite precise with our measure happens over here. Our nutritional, the understanding of our body and how to nourish our body in a way that we gain optimum performance from it. Somatic, and this is very close to the interior, the subjective. It's almost like our interior, our conscious awareness of our body's sensation, sensory occurrences, our somatic intelligence. And then I'm going to move down into the interobjective, the it space, or the systemic kind of types of intelligence. We have ecological intelligence, the ability to observe patterns in nature and how nature is undergoing certain sets of processes. And so I'm currently residing on a permaculture farm, and I quite love the practice of permaculture. And to me, permaculture develops this ecological intelligence. It's a systemic form of intelligence where I start to understand relationships between animals and plants and soil organisms and rain and different nutrient cycles and so forth. It's quite there's a lot of nuance to it, and there's a particular type of intelligence that forms the result. We have political intelligence, the ability to understand the way political structures occur, which I don't have much at all, but some people are very interested in political sciences and mapping this kind of political sense. Legal structures and the legal system. Lawyers develop a particular type of intelligence in understanding the law and understanding the system of the law. Engineering deals with different forms of engineering, deals with different forms of systems. Electrical engineering deals with the currents of electricity and the flows of electricity and how they relate to transistors and capacitors and all of these different things occur. Or hydro engineering, or solar engineering, and so on. And this is a particular type of intelligence that may draw on other intelligence, may draw on mathematical and cognitive intelligences, but the systemic understanding arises as a distinct intelligence here. Economic intelligence, the ability to understand and track the economic system and potentially make a lot of profit and gain from that, which I don't have a lot of understanding or nuance around. But some people are very, very savvy here. And they develop a particular form of intelligence and ability to read patterns that occur in the economic system. Patterns are arising. Patterns are a common kind of theme in this lower right quadrant, in this it's system space. Patterns arise. And then I want to move over to the intersubjective, or the we space. So this is the interpersonal. This is the space that arises between consciousnesses. So where my consciousness meets your consciousness, we start to have the intersubjective, or the interpersonal, the we space, this lower left quadrant. So types of intelligence that might occur here might be sexual. Obviously, there's a upper right or objective aspect of sexual intelligence, but then there's also the kind of the sexual intimacy, and we may want to study tantra or Taoist sexuality to develop kind of these very subtle levels of intelligence about how sexual energy flows and moves through our body in relation to another human being, how we might pass energy between us or dissolve energy blockages between us and develop states of, experience states of union through lovemaking, all of which is possible. There are quite nuanced and highly developed sexual possibilities that are available if we decide to develop our intelligence this way. There's our ability to teach or facilitate, which is a form of intelligence of working with groups. And they're distinct. Teaching and facilitation are quite distinct, and they don't operate the same way. Facilitation, to me, tends to be about creating a collective experience or creating an experience of some sort, whereas teaching is the impartation of knowledge, giving knowledge to others so that they may use that. But there's a whole skill set here. You can develop your capacity to teach or to facilitate to quite nuanced levels. I spent some time in the US, and I spent a little bit of time with a woman, Diane Musho Hamilton, who is an incredible facilitator. The level of sophistication she has developed in her ability to facilitate is magnificent. Absolutely incredible. Blew my mind. Conflict. Our ability to tolerate and manage and work with conflict is something that can be developed. And without that particular intelligence, conflict can blow us out, or we can find ourselves in a lot of conflict. So the ability to resolve and manage and mediate conflict is a particular form of intelligence that occurs here. Negotiation, our ability to negotiate with others, to come to shared agreements or shared understandings or shared kind of whatever we might be negotiating. This is a person-to-person skill. This operates in the domain between us. And then relationship and intimacy, which to me is where authentic relating kind of arises. Our ability to form meaningful relationships with others and to create intimacy. And I also think authentic relating, I haven't written it here as a separate skill because I actually think in some way it weaves through all of these to some degree or another. A little bit like in the upper left quadrant, we have cognitive. Cognitive is sort of like a meta-intelligence, meaning that developing our cognitive intelligence will make it easier to develop a lot of other capacities because we can apply our cognition to the development of other capacities. I can apply my cognition to learning mathematics or to learning music or to learning engineering or about economics or so on. So it's a little bit of a meta capacity. And I see authentic relating as well as a little bit of a meta capacity. It's a meta capacity in people intelligence, how to relate to and understand people, how to listen in a way where we evoke the essence of another human being out and how to express ourselves in a way where we give more of ourselves into the world. So, in summary, I've just kind of walked you through different lines of development through these 4 quadrants. So different aspects of intelligence that can be developed with intention to grow and situated, because I'm teaching authentic relating, situating this idea of authentic relating within this context, and that it is a nuanced and discrete form of intelligence that is only developed through applying oneself to developing that type of intelligence. Just like if I don't apply myself to learning a musical instrument, I will not learn how to play music. The same with authentic relating. If I don't apply myself to understanding how to relate with others, I will not get better at relating. And my ability to have person-to-person skills will remain impaired. So I feel quite passionate about this because I think it's important. I think as a little bit of a meta-intelligence, it affords us the ability to become quite powerful, especially when we couple this with other forms of intelligence, our teaching and facilitation, our cognitive intelligence, perhaps our literacy intelligence, our negotiation, so forth. And also, it's about evolution and growth and development. These things actually grow us. And there's another premise in this integral philosophy that the broader kind of I'm developing my intelligence, and obviously we don't have enough time in this lifetime to develop our capacity across the board and develop all of these. We have to choose what's most pertinent, what's most interesting to us to develop. Um, However, developing ourselves across a broad set of categories is going to facilitate our center of gravity, which is kind of like the development in which my core resides, which also has an upward trajectory. And there's maps of this, which I may go into later. There's maps of this development, or this kind of innate sense of gravity about how capable and how much capacity I have as a human being that grows. And so developing myself in a number of intelligences leads to that increasing. Um, and I think authentic relating or relationship is a very powerful one. It's almost a little bit of an essential, just like cognitive intelligence and emotional intelligence are pretty essential if we want to be effective and functional human beings. Our ability to relate to others is also quite an essential skill or capacity to develop, intelligence to develop. Thanks. I hope this was informative